When monsoon floodwaters shredded the border between Nepal and China this year, they took out highways, border crossings, and entire blocks of infrastructure. The headlines usually follow a familiar script. We call this a tragic natural disaster, an unpredictable catastrophe, or a sudden failure of the environment. Applying that label puts the blame squarely on the weather, neatly absolving human planners and engineers of any responsibility for the wreckage. We need to ask if we are completely misdiagnosing the problem. What if the environmental system didn't break down or fail at all? The Himalayas are not a chaotic, malicious environment out to get us. They operate as a strictly regulated, highly predictable physical machine, governed by gravity and water volume. The terrifying surges of mud and debris we see on the news are merely the gears of this mechanism, turning exactly as designed. As long as we treat the landscape as a broken system that lashed out unexpectedly, we remain completely blind to the actual cause of our own destruction. Every summer, the primary seasonal input of this geological engine turns on. Heavy monsoon rains arrive, dumping massive amounts of water onto the high-altitude terrain. That rainwater combines with a secondary structural input. Warming temperatures cause high-altitude glacial lakes to swell, filling basins with meltwater waiting to discharge. This topographical map shows where all that mass has to go. Gravity forces water downward through narrow choke points and steep ravines. Under immense pressure, rivers naturally overtop their banks and expand into lower floodplains. This geological engine operates on a fixed schedule, executing its logic without deviation. When this closed system overflows, it isn't an error or an attack on the valley below. It is the necessary physical release of accumulated kinetic energy. The variables only change when we force foreign, inflexible components directly into this geological engine. We do this by paving a highway directly parallel to a volatile, expanding riverbed, ignoring obvious high water marks. We carve critical energy infrastructure, like massive concrete hydroelectric dams, directly into steep, geologically unstable terrain. And we erect heavy commercial hotels and residential settlements directly inside the machine's natural flood zones, where water is mathematically guaranteed to go. We plan these projects as if a drawn boundary line, or a municipal zoning law, can somehow negotiate with the laws of physics. But the river has no obligation to know we are there. Millions of gallons of water do not pause before destroying our infrastructure. We treat our civilization as if it sits entirely separate from the natural environment, when in reality, we are fully embedded right in the middle of its turning gears. If you choose to place fragile human components directly into the machine's primary output chute, you guarantee failure and destruction every single time. The thick silt and debris covering these border communities serve as a physical record of the machine's predictable output. These ruins represent a mathematically inevitable result, the consequence of placing our infrastructure directly in the mountain's drainage path. The actual tragedy here is that we aren't guessing. We possess decades of geological data, and we know exactly why these valleys fill with water every summer. The real catastrophe is our cyclical choice to bring in the shovels, clear away the mud, and rebuild our structures in the exact same vulnerable locations, completely expecting a different outcome. This destruction stems from a persistent refusal to integrate known physical data into our civic planning and construction. Physics doesn't care about our property lines, and it certainly will not adapt its behavior simply because we object to the financial cost of the damage. Until we decide to respect the rigid, unyielding boundaries of this physical machine, we are going to keep engineering our own tragedies. The floods do not actively hunt for our homes and highways. We simply lay a paved path for the water to follow.